Hey there, welcome back to the table. So some good news and some bad news for the viewers. If this is your first time watching this particular playthrough, the good news for you is that I played this all the way through 1942 and into 1943 and realized they made some, like rule mistakes and things like that, and I deleted it all. And so this is now my second recording of a playthrough, and it's for you, it's going to look like this was, my very first try. And then for everybody else who's been logging in and actually watching this as quickly as I'm making them, you might be wondering, where the heck did all the videos go? And it's for the same reason. Some folks have been very helpful and pointed out some things I was getting wrong, which I feel really bad about because this is a game I've owned for a long time. And then, the challenge is that when you put it on the shelf for a year or longer, which is the case with this game, you come back and you think you remember the rules, and then you skim through the rules and you think you got it, and then you miss those key details that you may not have missed if this was a fresh game. And that's exactly what happened. I'm not making excuses. I was very disappointed with the quality of my output. So I'm starting over. Playing board games is a joy. And sometimes when I'm playing a board game I don't like, of course, that's not a joy. But this one is a joy to play. And the new expansions do give it more joy than less. Sometimes I don't remember to do the new expansions. Like we have these new island sheets and whatnot that added some new flavor. But anyways, there were some lessons learned and I got her down. So let's, as I promised, video 2 was going to be the playthrough. One thing I wanted to point out, it's really hard sometimes to try to re-explain the rules when I've already done that before in my previous videos. But I'm going to try to remind myself I got to go through that again. And then the other thing I wanted to point out, because I know I said this in my previous videos, is that the sheets, the carrier cards, all the fleet cards, if you will, tell you where exactly they start. So like these ones start in Japan, this one starts in East Asia. So make sure you use that as your guide. And once you set up the game, it should look like this. Now, before we actually start the turn, it's important to point out that anywhere, there's 3 conditions for controlling a space. You must have a U.S. land-based presence, whether it's an infantry or a plane. And, it's funny, I'm focusing on this first because this was my primary mistake that made me delete those other videos, is I actually would take this infantry and move it somewhere else, thinking that, okay, I was the last one to control this, so I still control this. The moment I move this infantry away, this flips over to Japan, and I lose control. I did that with Alaska. I did that with a lot of my... There was no way to retcon it, and that's where I said I'm very disappointed. I don't want to have videos on YouTube where I make those kind of mistakes and that throw people off. So Japan is in full control of this one. That's the reason why that objective is red. And then this one is in contest. So we have our units and they have theirs, but that still is red. It has to be completely free of Japan. That's rule number 2. And then rule number 3 is you have to be able to trace supply back to Hawaii or Alaska. So those are or Australia. I'm sorry, Australia is the other one. So you have to be able to trace supply. And then this island here is under contention. There's actually a battle going on, but that's not one of our objectives. Okay, so very first thing we do, the sequence of play is right here on the board. And, this resupply marker is supposed to be at 0. So let's do that real quick before we start. First thing we do is we advance the turn counter. Not a very difficult step. That's it. And sound effects are optional. So go ahead and do that. And then we do the US resupply step. I do remember trying to explain the basic game to people, so I will try to do that again here. For the resupply step, if this is the basic game, you look at your sheet and it says supply points 23. I know I'm looking at 1943, but you find the 1942 sheet, and this is where you go, and that's how many supply points you get. But we're not playing the basic game. We're playing the campaign with Total War expansion. So you're going to have this sheet instead. And what you do is you look at this box on the left. So for January, February of 1942, we get 20 supply points. And then by the end of this turn, if we control 2 or less objectives, we're going to immediately lose the game. Okay, so there is a critical, this REPL stands for you're replaced. So you're such a crappy commander that, you know, we're playing as Nimitz here, right? And Nimitz is so bad he's getting replaced by somebody else. One of our objectives is Alaska, the other one is Hawaii. It's going to be really hard to lose, but, you know, sometimes that's famous last words, right? So we get 20 points is what I'm getting at here. So I'm going to reach over here and grab 20 points. And the supply markers look like this. So that would be 20. There is a little box on the board up here for you to store them if you'd like. I like to keep them closer because they're easier for me to reach. And I'm not using this table at this phase of the game, so I just put, you know, my pieces there. So please forgive me for that. So what do I do with them? Well, that's what the US resupply step in the basic game is you're using these to buy units. Now your units would be, so like, see, we have these ships, infantry and planes. They're all available to be built, right, or purchased. They would normally be up here in these boxes, and you would just pay the price that's written on them. So what is the price for them? Well, for example, this carrier, the Wasp, the price is in the parentheses here. It's five supply points. The cruiser here is 2. It's in the bracket. Now, don't get confused. The carrier has a number in the brackets here. But see, the bracket number means that whenever Japan applies damage to us, they're going to damage whoever has the lowest number in brackets. So the carrier is going to get hit before this cruiser, for example. The cost, though, if there isn't anything in parentheses, the cost is just whatever's in brackets. So this one would cost 2 to build. This one would cost 5. And in the basic game, if you pay the price, it's automatically built. And it goes into the West Coast, right here on the United States. And that's true for your infantry and your planes. The cost is written in the brackets, or I think the carriers is the only exception where they're in parentheses. So for our version of the game, the Total War expansion, it's a very similar concept, but it's more complicated. So let's talk about that. That's where this comes in. Here, you're going to have this new factory sheet. So what's going on here is we have an inferior shipyard that has a capacity of 20 and a rush cost of 3. We'll talk about what those mean. We have a basic training facility that has a capacity of 3. And we have an assembly line with a capacity of 6. And let me zoom in for you there. Okay? And they're already built. That's what we have today. And we can upgrade those industries to produce more, but it's going to cost us, okay? And then the morale at the home front is right now we're organizing, and it's going to cause us to have 2 delays in each production line each turn. So we're going to have to upgrade our morale at home to be able to improve upon that. So what does all this mean? Well, let's use the example where I bought a Wasp and a Hornet, okay? The Wasp cost 5, well, not the Hornet, that cruiser. The cruiser cost 2, right? So I'd spend 7 supply points to build these. Well, they would be built in the shipyard because these are ships. The cruiser that costs 2 would go into the 2 space. The Wasp that costs 5 would go into the 5 space. Then every turn, when we get to this phase of the game, they would move 1 down, and then once the bottom one comes off, it's now off the production line and it can go onto the map. So there's a huge delay in getting just because you pay for a unit doesn't mean you get it right away. Okay, so you have to produce it. That's the first concept to understand. The second one is because our home, we have 2 delays. So what 2 delays means is I have to pick 2 in this production line, 2 in this production line, and 2 in this one, and delay them, meaning that they don't even get to move down. They have to stay where they are. So yeah, it stinks. So you're gonna have a huge setback at the beginning of the game. And the rush cost, this rush equals 3, is that I can spend 3 more supply points if I want to rush a unit down 1 space. The rush cost can only be spent once per unit, but if I have 6 units out here, I can do, you know, the rush cost times 6. As long as I have 18 supply points, I can do that, okay? So that's the idea of how this sheet works. Now, one last thing is the capacity. So the capacity is 20, and you know, if I zoom in here, this one has a cost of 5, this one has a cost of 2, so that's 7 capacity used out of 20. 20 actually seems like a lot for the ships, and I would have to say that it is. So my advice to you is you don't need to build your shipyard right away, or at least upgrade it. The thing that seemed to burn me, because I did play all 1942, the capacity of 3 on the infantry was actually a hang-up for me. So if you want to upgrade your basic training, that might actually be a good idea. But the biggest hang-up is your morale. 2 delays in each production line stinks. It absolutely stinks. There's not a better word. Well, there are better words, but I'm trying to keep this PG. Okay, so, and I apologize, it's at a weird angle. The camera can sit here, but then I have to hold it because I don't have a table for it to sit on. So the big thing is I wanted to point out to you that in order to upgrade this, I need 15 points spent here. And that's 15 points I'm not spending on building ships or anything else. So it stinks in that kind of way. But I'm only allowed to do a max of 8 each turn, okay? So it's gonna take me at least 2 turns to finish just 1 building upgrade, okay? And during those 2 turns, I'm gonna have to deal with the 2 delays. Now, the other thing is that this is called the US resupply step, as you can see here, right? The US resupply step is done in exactly this order, right here. And you've seen me do it a little bit out of order, and I'll do it that way the whole game probably, but see, because there's no camera or no table, my camera's bouncing. Okay, the first thing you do is you advance and delay forces. So if there was the Wasp here, for example, the advance means it gets to move down. The delay means I have to check this and delay 2 from each line. So as long as we're at this level of morale, this cannot advance. Like, it wants to advance, but I have to pick 2 to delay, so I'm delaying this so it doesn't get to advance. That's the first step. We have nothing built right now, so there's nothing to advance or delay this turn. So that won't happen until next turn, okay? So that should be the first easy thing. Then we gain the supply points. That's the 20 points that I just took. And now we're gonna apply the supply points, and we can rush it, which means that we get to advance it if we want. Put the newly started forces on the tracks, and that just means that whatever we paid for, we now put it on the tracks. So here's the deal. We're gonna spend 8 points for sure. I have to put the camera down, so give me a second. 5, 8, and 2. So what I did was I took one of my 10s and just made change. So these 8 points right here, I'm gonna grab these 8 points and we're putting them here. We're spending the max, okay? We need to get this upgraded because then it only is gonna delay our production by 1 instead of 2. That's huge, okay? The second thing is I still have 12 points left to do something with. I can't spend any more here. I mean, I could spend it, you know, to upgrade one of our industries, but I don't want to do any of that. I want to get production going. So what I did last time is I built a bunch of ships. But next turn, remember the advance and delay happens before we get our supply points. So the advance part is going to happen before I can finish this building. So that means there's going to be 2 delays in each one. Well, I can build a carrier this turn, but it's just going to sit there and not advance. So it's a waste. And so the trick is I want to build more than 2 units, so that way at least something advances. So I'm looking here at my infantry, which is very important. And these infantry all cost 1. There is a Marine that costs 2, but we're going to ignore that one for now. And so we're going to pick 3 of our infantry. And 1, 2, 3. One of these will produce. One of those infantry will produce. But it's going to cost me 3 supply points. So I'm going to take one of my 5s, spend 3, and I have 2 left. Okay, 2 of these will get delayed. That's what I mean by one of them will produce next turn. But we're going to at least get it onto the track. Okay, and then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same with the planes. Now, why can't I build more than 3? Because my capacity is 3. So I'm really limited in the capacity there. So let's do the same thing with planes. The planes, we do have some 1-cost planes, and we have some 2-cost planes. I only see 2 1-cost planes, and we can go up to 6. So I'm going to do 2. Let's do some nicer ones. 2, 4. Yeah, let's just buy 3 of them for 6. You know what? No, let's buy 2 of them for 4, and then let's buy 2 of them that only cost 1 for 6. Now, why am I limiting myself to 6? Well, same reason, right? My capacity is 6. And by having 4 of them, 2 get delayed and 2 of them will be able to advance. So you want to overload a production line, right? So that way you can overcome this delay issue. The problem with the ships is they're so dang expensive, you're not going to be able to build 3 or 4 ships up here. Well, you could, but you'd spend everything. So this is 3 and this is 6. So that's a total of 9. And I never made change. So I'm going to take 10 away. And now I have 1. So I'm at 3, okay? And I think I'm going to take those 3 and we're going to just spend it towards an industry. I tend to not like to keep them. Like I spend as much as I can in this early year, at the early part of the game, because you want to get your industry rolling. So I'm going to put them here because this infantry thing is quite restrictive. So I'm going to put 3 points towards my 10 there. I know it's not enough, but it's at least something. What I could do is for example, I could build a battleship for 3. Actually, I may do that. I know the battleship won't advance, but getting the units built is more important. Yeah, I'm actually going to do that. I'll do that instead. So, okay, I'm at 18 minutes. I know I usually go much longer, but I need to take a quick break, and then I will be back and we will continue this game. So I promised to play through. We just made it through the first 2 steps. We're going to start step 3 as soon as I can get back. Thank you for watching. Stay awesome, stay healthy and safe.